let's conclude our day by talking about VR, virtual reality, augmented reality, meta reality, and the whole ecosystem is called XR ecosystem because there are multiple of ways how we are shaping our reality nowadays. Metaverse is becoming a keyword in our talks with friends, maybe in the kitchen. Should I invest some crypto or not? But that's different kind of metaverse that's running out of fashion. But let's explore this XR ecosystem about VR and AR. So, what are the regulatory challenges? What are investors looking at when they look at the cases in this industry? And what's the climate in this market for investments? So, moderator is going to be Madara Kalniņa-Kalmale, President for Baltic Chapter VR AR Association.
It is.
So, please welcome.
All right then. Good evening, everyone. So, XR ecosystem, and okay, there is a state, right? At the very beginning, there's a state and state institution. So this evening with us is advisor to the President for Information and Digital Policy, Ieva Ilves. And in this ecosystem, we need also some private capital injection, of course, to make things happen. So today I invited to join us Petri Rajahalme from Fall Ventures, founding partner from Fall Ventures from Finland. So, and then of course we need entrepreneurs who are ready to jump into this metaverse. So today with us is also a co-founder of Red Frog, Toms Jona. And maybe let's start with a very brief introduction about your backgrounds, basically. Let's start, to understand how long time you've been in this industry. How do you look at this industry? Yeah, your backgrounds. We have 40 minutes for that, jokes aside, very briefly. Maybe let's start with you, Ieva, okay?
Yes, I surely could cover all 40 minutes myself on bio side. I've been doing digital policy for the last decade, mostly started with cybersecurity in Ministry of Defense, as many things in digital starts from defense or security angle, and then they kind of move on. That's where I got first hand on digital, but before that I worked more than a decade, 15 years on foreign security policy, and did NATO enlargement, which we now greatly appreciate nowadays. But also learned what it takes to be defensible and what's when you are secure, when you are small, when nobody is interested in you politically. So had quite a bit of background, in particular in security. Did a little bit of work on human rights and democracy, being based all around the region, different capacities, which I think now, when I sum it up in a sense, I worked recently, or last decade, more on digital, but with that previous experience of security and democracy and human rights and liberties and all we have, it somehow comes very much together today in technologies, and of course very much amplifies also with a occurring war or the war next door. So that's me in brief. I always feel, as someone who represents public sector government, in digital topics are not really very welcome because we are sort of police people. We are the bad ones who are not letting technologies do all the things they want. It's always said, okay, when government comes to table on technology, it's gonna ruin everything. Nothing good anymore gonna happen. And part of that is my role to sort of keep an eye that the way technology and digital ecosystems develop, that they actually do serve interests of people, society, country. But of course, on the other hand, I'm also a big advocate of that, the fact that we do innovate and that we develop and that we move on.
I hope you really advise to our president to support this industry.
We do have a difficult legal argument, and that's not easy to win.
That's the state part, which is important. And then comes the private capital into the game. And here I would love to hear, Petri, your background.
Yeah, thanks for having me, first of all, and nice to see so many people still hanging around here.
Exactly.
So I've been an entrepreneur myself in the software industry, and after that stint, ended up on the state side, governmental side as well. So I was working at Business Finland, which is this governmental agency funding $500 million in innovation yearly to startups, research institutes, universities. I was looking at hundreds of startups in the digital space, and end of 15, I ended up seeing quite a lot of VR and AR companies on my table. So did a bit of digging around and realized that Finland had this huge talent pool because of the success in the gaming industry, who were now looking at doing something else with the same engines, Unity, Unreal. So I pushed to set up a 30 million euro internal program to boost kind of the birth of the ecosystem and fund in a non-dilutive way the startups working in that field. Did that for a couple of years, then I was asked to lead Nordic XR Startups, which was a joint venture, strategic joint venture to invest early stage with a Nordic scope. It was kind of an accelerator investment company, hybrid model. Did that for a couple of years, then met my current partner, who's in London, and we kind of saw where, or we thought we saw where the industry was going with VR, AR, and the whole metaverse trend. So ended up joining forces and founding FOV Ventures, which we launched in February. So that's a pre-seed and seed stage investment company, VC fund that we're running now.
Okay, great to hear. There are funds who look at this industry. And then, of course, in this ecosystem, we need entrepreneurs who are ready to build, develop something. Tom, tell us about your background and why did you choose this industry as such?
Yeah, thank you as well for having me here. That's a good topic why I choose it. I've never been on the state side, on the opposite of you both guys. More than 20 years in business, and last couple of years focusing on augmented reality heavily. Worked for a Latvian company producing augmented reality headsets, and we're communicating with different organizations globally, seeing the gap there, missing pieces, and that served as a heavy push actually to jump in my own thing and trying to work on closing some missing pieces and improving the process. And also my previous background before that most likely will serve as a good help, because I've spent some time working for different organizations, some larger, some smaller, and during the last years specifically I see that augmented reality and virtual reality is becoming a sort of piece of daily workflow. It can help, it can support, but there is still much things to do, and of course we cannot move forward with significant support from different sides. So.
Of course. Let's take a look back a bit. XR ecosystem or industry as such, AR, VR, was basically already out there 20 years ago. And for example, the famous Magic Leap, I cannot even think how it would be without Magic Leap, such a magic, that magic whale which came into the gym and no one even was wearing AR glasses, and then this hype arrived all around the AR industry. And then also my experience showed that there was a huge disappointment at investment side to basically invest money in this industry, right? So Petri, I would like to understand more, how do you look at this industry right now? I understand that there is this belief, once again, in this industry, right?
Yes,
Yes, there
with a
is.
small caveat. So the it's not really the ecosystem to blame, but it had its part to play. But there was just this hype that built up to be too big in kind of 2015, 16, where yes, you had the first kind of Oculus headsets, you had HTC that came with the Vive headsets. You could see the promise of that technology, but everybody thought that tomorrow everybody will have a headset. So obviously we now know that that didn't happen. So a lot of investors burnt their hands with kind of putting in money where a lot of them just failed completely due to timing. At Nordic XR Startups, we, again, because of the kind of content-driven ecosystem in Finland through gaming, a lot of the earlier investments that were done were in gaming studios or content-driven startups. And because there was no audience for their content, because the PC VR installed base was fairly limited, they weren't able to kind of extend their runway enough to see the first wave of standalone headsets. And that was obviously a game changer. Meta or Oculus shipping the first standalone headsets. The first one already was a huge success. Quest 2 is a magnificent piece of hardware. And we see already the upward trend. If you're lucky enough to get access to the store, the platform, the Oculus official store, I think a third of the titles on that store are already grossing 1 million revenue plus, which is a good number, considering it's still a relatively small installed base, even for the standalone headsets. So now, obviously, we saw a bit the same wave with the whole metaverse hype. That was a fantastic crash and burn on the crypto side in an even shorter span of period of time. But now what we're banking on is kind of this whole technology stack and the kind of internet moving into a more 3D space. So whether it's fully immersed with VR or using some kind of augmentation like AR, or just building these virtual spaces that are cross-platform where you can access them through your desktop, through your mobile, or whichever kind of platform or media you want to. So the upside is tremendous. You still need patience. On the VR side, if I'm sat at a conference in VR, I have a huge headache after I come out of the headset. So
That's true.
form factor is still a big issue. With AR, the technological leaps that need to be taken before we're walking every day with glasses on is still like years and years away. But I think we're on a very, very interesting trajectory now.
Okay, so what do I hear from you is that it was simply wrong timing for the technology, maybe 10 years back. Right now, the hype is over, and now probably the technology will finally reach the market. And Tom, here the question to you. You've been in this industry for years, and how do you see, like, you've been working with corporates and startups, and what is the feeling right now? How corporates look at the AR or VR? Are they ready to really integrate the technology right now on the spot?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, because we might split the corporates as well in two parts. There are the ones which are looking for the solution for themselves, and there the interest is quite high, because they've pointed out some problems, some issues for themselves. and they see that augmented reality, virtual reality, it depends on each company and the idea they have behind. It might solve something for them, make something faster, more efficient, or cheaper, or name it as you wish. And then there are those who have the business idea behind it, where the augmented or virtual reality can improve their business, can open some new use cases, reach new markets, and so on. The ones which see the business behind it, I would say they understand that it's something what they need, but in many cases they are not ready to adopt it yet, because the tricky thing is to find out how you're going to earn it out of it, how you will get the actual money. And it's still in some places in this hype kind of mood as well, because they understand they need it, they won't live without it for long anymore, but still needs to be defined from where the money comes. But for those who have the idea for their own problem solving, there it's probably a bit different story. There the companies are more acceptant. The other issue which stands there is still for some use cases the devices is not there yet, because there is a huge offering from different countries and companies. Some of them stating that they have like state-of-the-art device, but actually never ever produced anything. It's only mock-ups and pictures of the devices. And then there are those which are accessible in the market. In many cases, the failure comes from the fact that wrong device was chosen for the wrong purpose. But all up, the interest is there. Not only from the corporates, also from rather small companies, I would say. That's the fact right now. But it needs to be two-directional communication in between the ones who are providing the solutions and the ones who are like seeking for them and waiting for them.
Okay, so industry is partially ready to uptake the technology. How ready is the state to support this technology? Are there already some established regulations which we'll have to follow, or it's still under development? Eva.
So governments and technology, I think there's no sort of specific AR, VR, but my major point always is that the rules or the approach that public sector or governments are sort of applying towards technologies, mostly via regulations or by courts. You know, US tend to go through courts, you know, Europe tries to write regulations ahead. The principles don't change. The things, I think, not only AR, VR is probably a specific field, but I think in overall, the hype of technologies is sort of sliding back. Not that we don't want to innovate or we don't want to move on, but we have figured out that there are a number of concerns through the first decades that someone has to address, right? And we have discovered security topic as a particularly important. We have discovered privacy difficulties that we can't solve, or surveillance over people and the use of data. Who owns for whom? What do they do with those data? Do they serve the owner of data? Who is the owner of data? Is that a person whose data is used? So all these difficult questions that are not necessarily solved, but that when you ask whether there is something to watch out for regulation is basically that all these regulations have struggled the same principles, and it doesn't matter what the technology is, whether it's social platform, whether it's a watch, whether it's VR, AR, or metaverse, or something else that we're going to be building. The same concerns and the same attempts from public segment, these will be sort of one or another ways there will be attempts to regulate. But I think the positive news, which is not solved particularly in Europe, but is a good way in the sense that Europe has discovered that it needs to invest in technologies, also in AR, VR technologies, sort of not to lose a competitive ground on a globe. And we know that with geopolitical trends, that's where policy comes in, that we don't have this anymore, this one big happy village, one big happy internet. We know that there are sort of a different, whichever way you look, you have Europe, US, or more liberal world, you have China, and now, of course, you have also aggressor state Russia, though maybe not the biggest player in technology design. And so Europe understands that it has to build its own capacity. A lot been said about European sovereignty in technologies. And I think that's where one of the concerns and also an opportunity is for AR, VR, because right now that is one niche industry which is quite dependent on Asian supplies, be it hardwares, be it different other components. And so Europe clearly does not want that to be that way forever. And so I think there is a ways and there are programs and finances that are becoming hopefully more and more available to actually boost up that capacity within Europe, with European countries, within companies or talents. So I think there is an opportunity. But that opportunity goes hand in hand with all the concerns that I mentioned. And so I think solutions that are built now and will be sort of built in future will have to start to accommodate and figure out how to deal with privacy, data, and security topics. And I think that might slow down a little bit the pace of innovation. But I think on the other hand, it's a good news as for all of us as society. We know how easily that can be abused against our own people.
Okay, so let's hope we will not get lost into bureaucracy and all the regulations. And all right, Petri, I know before the panel we talked about companies in which you have been invested. So in how many companies so far you've been invested?
So Nordic XR Startups, we had a portfolio at its peak of 18 companies. Some unfortunately didn't succeed. There's 12 active companies. We've had one IPO, one secondary sale, and one acquisition from a Swedish listed company. Then while we were raising the fund, we did almost 10 angel investments, and now I was just trying to wire the money to our 8th investment in the lobby there. So,
okay,
who calculated? But I have to say, so Nordic XR Startups, it was very specifically VR and AR startups. During the fundraise, our kind of angel portfolio, and now with the fund, there's only one company which is very heavily leaning on the XR side of things, which is Port6, Finnish company that's doing kind of the last mile of input.
Sorry for interrupting. What is the ticket size which you offer to the new company which want to build something in AR, VR?
At pre-seed, we invest 250,000 up to, and seed stage, we invest up to 500,000.
Okay, a good beginning.
Yeah.
All right. Very provocative question from my side. For example, to the advisor to the president, Eva, would you be ready to invest in this industry, like by your own, privately?
Government people are not really good.
Allowed to answer such questions.
No, they're not really good to accumulate the capital to reinvest somewhere.
That's a good point, actually, yeah.
But I think in general, that's where my struggle occasionally is in my sort of double head or more sort of approaches that I do advise actually to to innovate and try. And we know that through technologies, it's only this trial methodology, right? You know, you iterate, you fail, you improve, and you move on. And without that, we really can't succeed. And so I'm a great advocate, and it's difficult for government to stomach it. You know, we always design a plan, and then we want to, you know, we do procurement, and then we buy something, and it takes ages, and then it's not relevant for anything anymore. But still, we write a report that it was an outstanding thing, whatever we did. So I'm advocating for that, but I think it is difficult, and I see, I mean, as much as AR, VR in my personal life has not played a big role. I'm not missing it, and and I haven't figured out what is the problem that that gadget or, you know, solution will solve for me. So I think there is quite a bit of space for industry to come up with these ideas. What is that thing will solve for me, or that thing will solve for society? And maybe for a while it will remain a very specific niche, you know, be it medicine, be it gaming, be it media and entertainment. You know, that's fine too, but, you know, that's a particular. So I'm all for, you know, nothing to invest, but I can put a good word in policy debate.
We hope so.
That's
Can
actually
invest that.
a lot of times that's actually an issue that we encounter. A lot of the startups just have fallen in love with the technology, so with VR and AR. So they come at you with a pitch that is just full of like VR, why it's fantastic, or what does AR add, instead of actually having that as just a medium or a platform. It's still fundamentally you need to have a problem that you see in society or in technology that you're trying to solve. And if it happens to be solved in the best way with VR or AR, then so be it. But that's often what we encounter is you come at it with technology first and not the problem first.
Tom, is it easy to raise capital in this industry? You as an entrepreneur, young entrepreneur.
Straightforward answer, no. And Petri, you just mentioned a good point. Many companies are going to investors with why this or that is great, and specifically also with the VR and AR, and that also is pushing somehow a little bit the investors off, because in some cases when the investor hears that it's some sort of thing around VR AR, the conversation in the very beginning is probably not very open and accepting and warm. The other thing actually is that local investment or investor environment still also is not very accepting to this particular industry. I believe there is a reason why many VR AR companies are established in US, and of course much more money there, I believe, but in many cases there are multiple other reasons as well, and therefore I believe these kind of events also are very good, because as I mentioned before, the communication must happen both ways, and there need to be communication in between the entrepreneurs and investors. The government as well needs to be there, and on what I see the most important is communication in between the company who is working on some sort of solution and the existing or potential customer, because I've seen many cases where the development happens just based on some sort of idea that it will work, and it needs to be like this, but it needs to be like this in a person's mind who is developing that. And when you get through to the actual customer, you're being pushed off quite easily, because that's definitely not what he's expecting to receive. And if there is this two-directional communication, also investors are much more accepting to those solutions. of course, there needs to be also a return on investment, and you need
Of
to show where the money will come from. But yeah, that's a basic thing.
So what do I hear is that we need some applications, like real applications with added value, yeah?
Sure.
Not just gaming and entertainment, which is nice, but I guess also like state institutions and others are looking for applications where we can really see the value. But let's look in other direction. Well, Petri, how many pitches do you see per day?
So far, I think we're almost up to 500 since
500 per day? No.
no since we launched in Q1.
Okay. Which is the craziest idea which you have seen? Can you remember some craziest idea about AR, VR, and business idea?
Only like we launched in February, and that was kind of the last peak of the biggest kind of hype around metaverse, and everybody was just launching tokens. So these tokens were the craziest, were just like based on nothing, based on thin air, like hundreds of millions of valuations. And we're building this virtual world where they had no plan on how they'll get people to join or stay there. But we have this great engine that will create new worlds, and we have this token that will just shoot to the moon. So the crazy valuations that we saw based on not technology that was being built or even ideas, but just like the hype was a bit tiring. So we welcomed the kind of, whatever you want to call it, crypto winter or whatever, crash of the metaverse hype is just cleaned up a lot of it, and now it makes more sense what people are kind of thinking of building. Yeah, I don't think, luckily, I haven't been shocked by any one specific pitch.
NFT is good, non-fungible tokens, right? It's a good topic here. So basically, I'm not sure if everyone knows what is that. So just give you an example that you can buy some virtual shoes and try them out on your avatar and pay not only few hundreds but even few $1,000s or euros for those shoes, or you can buy a house in virtual reality and then live in a place where maybe in real life you couldn't afford. So Eva, would you be ready to buy non-fungible token like house in Miami and for few millions or billions or whatever? Because it's happening right now. It's not a dream. It's actually a real life. People are spending money to buy NFTs. So.
Yeah, I would have to start with my own avatar. So I don't have that yet. So like, maybe I think I'm more from my digital work experience. I'm actually really interested in those social solutions that solves public problems, and I think society has a lot. Actually, if we leave our bubble where we are, techies and where we are experts or we are political elite, when we go to regular people, then they actually do face quite a lot of life problems, which might not necessarily solve by avatars. So maybe it helps to live in some. It gets some mental training to live in an illusion and improve your mood. But I wanted to mention, because you asked Petri about solutions, and I thought, like, for example, example in Latvia is this WeReach. We discussed briefly as we were coming here, which is sort of virtual reality solution or idea. I mean, a product being in process being built is for autistic children to help, because that's kind of safe environment, and they find it that they are very responsive and they actually progress much faster. And that's something, it's hard. In Latvia, we struggle. We don't have enough medical support. You don't get those consultations for kids. You can't. These things actually help to solve a real problem. The problem itself is that that's not so easy to scale. It's not easy to get the return of investment. And that's maybe another topic for public. That's where government or public money cooperates with private, where you solve this problem which is not necessarily easy to monetize, right? It's not really a segment where you can get a good investment return of your investment, right? You probably can't even charge that much, but that's where maybe a government or public funds can step in. But in general, I'm really keen to see these types, and I would be ready to sort of invest and be trying to help these type of products and ideas to develop.
Tom, you want to add something on this?
I'm thinking of what would be my answer to this, and I believe I should say that that's all great and all the NFT stuff and everything, but I would agree with Eva that my understanding is that it needs to bring some added value, some benefit for whoever the end user is. The entertainment or earning money for, of course, it is a different type of benefit, but yeah, the solutions should fix something, should make something better, and I know that in many cases that's probably not the best business ideas, right? But yeah, it can be sorted out.
Yeah, definitely. The technology is emerging, and let's hope that we will have several applications which really brings us value. Where do you see this technology, let's say, in 5 years? Petri, where do you see? How is our everyday life with AR, VR in 5-year period?
I think the enterprise side will definitely be a bigger and bigger driver for VR, because
Particularly VR or
so
AR?
I'll start with VR.
Okay.
Like the things that you mentioned, there's so much evidence as to how VR can help kind of in the design process. For example, Varjo in Finland, the headset maker, they have the automotive industry, almost all of them maybe, as their clients, and they used to still make clay models to this day almost. And now they can collaborate with high fidelity, high quality around, like someone from Kia being in Korea and someone in Frankfurt around the same model in VR. It's clear there's clinical research how you can clear yourself from certain phobias with the help of VR, like curing yourself from arachnophobia in real life versus with the help of VR, or fear of heights. I myself do that with playing Climb in VR. So there's an abundance of evidence to the benefits of VR, and I think it's just been, and it's still to some extent today, an equation of form factor, price, availability of the hardware, and then the adoption of the industry to clearly just see what the benefits are, because it's such a big thing to actually have and like see what VR is for yourself. Like if you haven't had the chance, and I think there's still some VR headsets.
Yeah, there
it's
are.
still amazing to actually live it. So it's just a question of adoption. And we see kind of a more clear, predictable path for VR. For AR, I don't think in 5 years we're still going to be where everybody's going to walk around with AR glasses. The technology probably isn't there yet, but the phones that we have, everybody in our pockets, that's a device to already use it for everyday life in AR. You have hundreds of millions of people using AR on a daily basis. It's the next generation who use it on the social media platforms and like buy shoes with looking at their feet and swiping at different models. So to them, it's everyday life. So I think the adoption will be even bigger for AR. It's a bit more unpredictable maybe with the hardware side of it.
You have a comment from your side. Where do you see this technology in 5 years?
Yeah, I'm optimist, I think, and I think from this European perspective, as I'm in a European government, so I really think that Europe will invest and actually will boost, and that's our opportunity. It's opportunity for all our industries, for our companies to actually come up with ideas, experiment, innovate, research. And because I think it's a very clear that Europe wants to have those capabilities at home, and there will be a lot of investment into that domain. And so I think 5 years is a solid time to see development.
Tom, where do you see this industry in 5 years?
I believe in the next 5 years it will clear out quite significantly which industries can benefit from it and which not. Because right now everybody is trying to do some. Seen some cases where probably it's more of a hype than actual benefit. I might argue a bit with Petri that I agree that it won't happen in a way that everyone will walk around with VR or AR, most likely with AR headsets. However, the devices are getting much more improved during the last couple of years. And I know by myself a number of devices which are daily usable already now. It depends on, of course, on application. I wouldn't like to walk around with it like 24/7, but I clearly can see an existing benefit from already existing devices. Not talking even about what will happen with the hardware within 5 years, because during last years there has been some significant improvements, and I know there are companies who are gonna come out shortly with some interesting things. So 5 years will clear out some stuff, and then I believe the next 5 will make the actual jump in a industry and in development.
Very well. I guess we are ready to engage with audience, right? Right. Are there any questions maybe raised during the discussion? Or everyone is already in mind out there drinking wine?
Everyone thinks about that place where they can test it. There's a Facebook Meta room. If you went for lunch there was this one room there. So, who haven't had experience of having glasses and falling in the corner? There was a question? Yeah.
Yes, please. Thank you for the discussion. Philippe Agar from Nokia. I would like maybe to get the comment on the panel on the 5G connection with AR, VR. We didn't discuss 5G yet.
Okay. About connectivity, Tom, maybe that's your field where you can comment. I know that you've been working with 5G and hardware connection.
Yeah, I've been somehow working with it for a last couple of years, and there is a significant place for the 5G and for the connectivity, specifically for the applications to become a part of our daily life. Already now I see that if we talk about Latvia, for example, the environment is rather good for many applications to be used and to run them on a daily basis. The cloud computing resources are also available. The matter of fact is that the prices and everything, but that's a different story. We can put it on the side. But it is a crucial fact to have this connectivity, because the more how to call it, immersive, yeah, let's put it this way, the more immersive the application will be, the more bandwidth you will use, the more compute power you will use, and those things cannot happen on a device, right? So you need to do it somewhere on a cloud, and yes, it's highly required to have a good connectivity. But I see that we are going the right direction, and I don't see it as an issue even now, and knowing that you guys like Nokia, for example, you're doing a lot in that field. After a couple of years, we will be even further with this, and that doesn't bother me, to be honest. I see that things are happening there.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a crucial technology to have, because the file sizes are getting bigger that you have to move around. You need reliability of the network if you're in a stadium environment. And you're augmenting something through your phone, for example. So it's a very crucial technology. The Immersal, one of the companies I was chairing, did a lot of collaboration with the big operators, and basically you need the MEC kind of infrastructure to be able to have that reliability, because the worst mistake that you can do is put a lot of money into content, which then if you bring in 40,000 people into a stadium, for example, then suddenly it crashes.
Absolutely.
And that's going to be like the cardboard VR. Like everybody tried cardboard VR and thought that's VR and got them kind of away from VR.
That is something you can really notice also out there, because by testing out the hardware today, there was a quite visible delay because of the network. So it's really crucial, to use these technologies.
But it was Wi-Fi.
Yeah, what I'm telling, that 5G is necessary to stream the content which is rich. Yeah, so that's for sure. Any other questions?
I think in real life, drinking is the best of
A real
everybody.
water in real life. Okay.
All right.
It
I
seems
guess.
that we have been very clear.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you for surviving, concluding this day.